Oswald was assassinated 2 days later, abandoning his young family. They were born into a prominent family. Their dad's measures taken on November 22, 1963, loomed large over their lives from the very beginning. However, in spite of a childhood obsessed by stares and murmurs, the lives of two ladies were able to their own. This video examines about what became of Lee Harvey Oswald's kids and how they handled their infamous history, the difficulties they confronted, and the unexpected twists they lived in the decades following the JFK murder, born into a notorious situation. Lee Harvey Oswald in 1961 saw the marriage of Marina Prusakova, and they had two daughters together. June, born on February 15, 1962, Lee Oswald, and the birth of Audrey Marina Rachel Oswald, October 20, 1963. Audrey, the infant who would eventually be made just 33 days old when she went by Rachel. Her father was charged with murder, President Kennedy, who was later fatally shot on live television. Over the course of 2 days, the children of Oswald changed from being normal babies to the father's daughters of the most despised man in America. Marina Oswald, their mother, was suddenly a widow at the age of 22 in the middle of a media frenzy. Alongside her, June, the toddler, and Rachel, the baby, Marina found herself being chased after her arms by journalists and plagued by her husband's notoriety. In one famous picture at the November 1963 funeral for Oswald, Marina sits at the cemetery with a small June as a family member holds infant Rachel. The entire world was watching this tiny family. Marina needed to determine how to raising her daughters in a highly scrutinized public emphasis that very few, if any, could actually comprehend. An effort to be normal. Dedicated to providing her daughters with atypical existence, Marina looked for a new begin. In June of 1965, she was married again, becoming Oswald Porter. Marina Winshire married Kenneth Porter. Kenneth was an electronics technician who supplied Festival family with a baby born in 1966, Mark, a half-brother. The pair of Oswald girls' surnames had changed, but not officially accepted. Porter was utilized in everyday existence and an opportunity. At an average yearly life. Marina and the kids relocated to Charleston and subsequently Rockwall, Texas, little towns where they wanted to fit in. Yet fleeing the it was simpler to say Oswald's name, Shadow, rather than finished. Marina went above and beyond to shield Rachel and June from unwelcome pay attention. She even ensured that her daughters were always well-groomed. Any time they went outside. Regardless of how minor the task is, as June, her mother, she subsequently claimed, was unaware. When we happened to run into someone, she did not want us to appear like destitute white people. Garbage, frequent, easy food store visits become a spectacle. Other shoppers would pause and gaze. Realizing it was Marina. As the fragile, widowed Russian beauty, the president was shot by the same man. Marina attempted to conceal in order to protect the girls. The clearest indication of their identity, their last name. When June started going to public school, she started using June, her stepfather's last name, Porter, rather than Oswald. Rachel would follow suit. This anonymity was intended to provide them with a new beginning, free from theatric connection to their father. To a certain extent, it was helpful, though there was a way for Oswald's legacy to catch up. Alongside them. Since childhood, June and Rachel observed odd phenomena that there was nothing else for other families to cope with. The mailbox belonging to the family was shotted by news teams, and unidentified vandals occasionally rode the school bus, wishing to catch a glimpse of Oswald's children. Relocating to Rockwall, a small town, carried with it a unique kind of fame. Everybody know my mother in town, Rachel subsequently said. Remembered, and although the majority of people were gentle and constantly whispered things regarding the family, even Marina's personal people were interested in life. Helicopter above her during her private nuptials. Kenneth Porter, transforming the joyful event into a circus for the media. In spite of insurmountable difficulties, Kenneth and Marina gave a caring home and made an effort to, like any other child, raise the females. At Lee Harvey Oswald's house became the elephant in the room about which no one spoke orally. Marina hardly ever mentioned her late husband while the girls grew up. For many years, Rachel and June led an seemingly typical life. Birthday celebrations, school, pals, and no actual awareness of the historical significance they were carried by their family. According to all reports, the sister had a fairly typical upbringing. Most of the time, they went with buddies to school functions, and generally given the same treatment as other children. However, there were times, particularly when they grew older and reality set in, harsh methods, unwelcome attention. Rachel joined her high at that point. School cheer squad. A couple hecklers would shout taunts from the stands, such as "Your father shot Kennedy," a Reverend, "I'm glad your father is no longer alive," and laid to rest. It hurt to hear such nasty comments. However, Rachel pointed out that, in addition to those incidents, her time in school was for the most part. It is normal and helpful. Tabloid rumors they were not abandoned by the press. Alone, even as teenagers. Once, a tabloid published a dramatic and untrue tale with Thiswelt kids don't have dogs or dates, suggesting that the girls were taking the lead lives of loneliness. Actually, June traveled to a prom and even prompted media to attend that evening at her home. The Inquirer actually showed up on their doorstep on the night of her prom. Their family had come to accept such invasions in stride, nearly becoming accepted ongoing media coverage rumors throughout the neighborhood. At Rockwall, their neighbors may give them a warm welcome, but whisper to each other about their association with the most infamous people in history. Murder. The girls become used to life beneath constant scrutiny, even if they made an effort to ignore it. During it all, June and Rachel were taught by Marina the notion that they weren't in charge of their father's behavior. She desired her daughters to feel loved and normal, rather than. Additionally, for a while, the plan was successful. The females really didn't recognize the differences in their family was, at least until a crucial day, when the family's secret was revealed in the early 1970s. Swas eventually uttered out loud. Secrets inside the family. For nearly 10 years, Marina maintained the integrity of Lee Harvey Oswald's mostly kept a secret from her daughters. The name Oswald appeared in headlines, not at home. However, when the girls grew as she grew older, Marina realized she couldn't protect for all time. June was once Rachel at roughly 7, Marina at around Nina Detamont. That it was time to inform them of the truth. Her daughters were seated on a large green couch and tenderly outlined how the individual who had raised Papa Kenneth, their cherished father, was not the father they were born to. Their actual Lee Oswald was his father, and he had been charged with the murder of the President of America. This insight struck sisters firmly. I was unaware of my family wasn't the same until I was only 7, Rachel subsequently acknowledged. All of a sudden, so many confusing fragments of given the news, their early years made sense. Cameras, following their bus, the unidentified in the direction of their mailbox, the embarrassing inquiries from other children, did you as your father the president? Everything fell into place after they discovered who their dad was. In the house, even after despite this admission, the subject stayed delicate. We didn't talk much about Lee. Regarding their family life, Rachel said, Marina provided the finest response to the girls' inquiries. She could, but she made it clear that their father wasn't them. They were their own individuals, and she desired them to mature free from the weight of his every day. They bear the burden of crime. Every now and then, Marina would bring up little Endeville recollections. Maybe she'll tell Rachel. Only a mother, 2 children, and a stepfather, not the children and widow of Anne Madeira. However, within their house hung November 22, 1963, in darkness. Consider the perplexity and interest of 2 little girls battling tebbing, aware that their biological father was renowned worldwide for the worst offense. There was no manual for being the reputed daughter of assassin of the president. It was a secret. Much heavier than the average family drama. Not surprisingly, given that they grow up to be adults, June and Rachel would have a strong desire to for themselves who their father was in reality, and what had occurred in Dallas on that terrible day. Emerging from the darkness. For 4 decades, Marina had managed to maintain it out of the spotlight for her daughters, but in the late 1980s and early 1990s, history's pool started to catch up. With the daughters of Oswald. Approaching the 30th anniversary of the 1993 Kennedy assassination resulted in a revival of the public's interest. New books and conspiracy theories were making news. As well as their mother, Marina had begun to express her doubts regarding the official narrative. Following years of inquiet, Rachel and June each chose to have their own conditions to advance and give a glimpse into their lives to the world. The eldest daughter, June, was the first to raise their voice. At the age of 30, in 1993, she agreed to a rare interview, showing up on the Today Show on NBC to discuss what it was similar to becoming Lee Harvey, the child of Oswald. Naturally anxious .com/June disclosed how her mother had protected them completely. For 25 years, it was a topic we didn't discuss. A lot of topics around the house. Mum would attempt to protect us, I said. She said, the murder as well, as her father's notoriety had been practically off-limits. Spent the majority of her life at home. Presently, June was in front of a nationwide audience. Lastly, answering everyone's query, have always pondered, did she think she was real? In reality, the father assassinated the president. Kennedy. June refused to accept her dad's complete innocence. Yet she managed to evident that she believed the whole truth was sunk now at this time. There are several details we would want to obtain for me as well as my family, she urged, implied it there was still much work to be done many years following the Warren Commission. June's questions remained unanswered. On her father's involvement in the JFK tragedy. The interviewer was informed that she would accept it if conclusive. Evidence revealed only assassin was Oswald. I'll accept the reality as it is, yet she suggested that no such evidence has surfaced. To her contentment. Similar to many, June suspected there were more Americans to the narrative, and she desired entry toll of the proof and confidential documents that it had been secured. Decided to be active in the early 1990s declassification efforts for the JFK assassination. Even composing a letter to the president and Congress should advocate for openness. Approximately when the JFK Records Collection Act was creating a review committee to make information available by June came forward with the intention of not just fulfill her personal curiosity, but moreover, to counter the never-ending whirlpool of false information regarding her relatives. Following one well-known interview in June mostly withdrew from public life in 1993. Perspective. She had slightly opened the door to discuss her viewpoint, and after she was happy to leave after saying her piece, returning to a personal life. But there was another effect of appearance. It facilitated her younger sister's path to give her a voice as well. In 1995, Rachel, who was in her early 30s now and frequently traveled Toby Rachel, her middle name, instead of Audrey, interviewed with Texas. Every month, which was the first time she had discussed in public her father and her family's peculiar path. Rachel's approach was similar to that of her sisters. Cautious, introspective and looking forth reality. She had just turned 1 month old when the assassination occurred, so in contrast to June, she lacked no recollection of Lee actually. Rochelle was so dissimilar from Oswald's name that Kenneth Porter, in her opinion, was for the first few years her real father of her existence. At the age of 7, learning that she was the daughter of Lee Oswald and had been a startle. However, as she explained to the magazine, it was also a little freeing to finally comprehend her own narrative. Rachel revealed colorful stories from their early years, verifying a lot of June's explained. She remembered the media hysteria, as well as how paparazzi and reporters them over time. For her, these experiences of intrusion were commonplace on a perverse manner. She had nothing else ever encountered. She brought up one especially offensive tabloid headline which stated, "Oswald children don't have a depicting the sisters as either dates or canines. Unfriendly misfits." Rachel detested witnessing false information about her relatives written, phoning declared the tales to be wholly untrue. Just so you know, both sisters did have pets and undoubtedly had a high school romance similar to other children. The headline of that tabloid was merely sensationalism that was hurtful. When the interview took place, Rachel was working in a chili parlor as a waitress while undergoing nursing school. She was committed to creating a typical fruitful life remote from notoriety of a given name. However, such as Rachel's sister and mother were unable to avoid the persistent question of the guilt of the parent. She acknowledged that she had seen the 1991 Oliver Stone film JFK, whereby her father is depicted and unexpectedly. She sensed the film's Lee Harvey Oswald's portrayal was precise in expressing his mysterious persona. Rachel also expressed her conviction that the murder might not have been an act of lone wolfing. She didn't believe her dad may have worked by himself in murdering Kennedy. This wasn't a crass claim or an attempt to attract attention. It was a sincere manifestation of the same uncertainty and the requirement for clarifications that June had explained. The two sisters, possessing wealth in the shadows their whole lives of this past, only wanted to find out the reality of the events of 1963, living away from the spotlight. Following their brief public debut, June and Rachel's eye in the 1990s went back to being largely anonymous, speaking up and expressing their viewpoint in order to demand the truth. They decided to live their adult lives in as much privacy as possible. Feasible, each sister concentrated, one establishing her own family and profession, found not to be characterized by the notorious legacy of the father. June, who had adopted the last name Porter on a daily basis. Life, got married, and had her kids. Throughout the 1980s, midway through the 1990s, she had 2 little boys of her own and doing administrative tasks in an office. She fought to keep her safe privacy, particularly that of her boys. In one instance, a Sea Orca found an article that makes June's identity public, and June distributed throughout the office. Gathered her group to verify the facts, but adamantly requested that they keep it to themselves. She was concerned of her residence or their children's presence, the same circus that hampered her own upbringing might fall upon them. Having experienced death once, she was resolved to protect her kids from the conspiracies and assassination cults buffs who had harassed the Oswalds. Generally speaking, Judy managed to stay beneath the radar. She continues to use a pseudonym in her work life and stays virtually not visible to the general population. In her now June Oswald Porter, in her early 60s, had never published a book or tried to get attention. She seems to like the silence. Suburban existence of an average American mother, haunted forever, but not by whom her dad was. A few years ago, Rachel Younger also established a peaceful existence in Texas after completing nursing school. She became a registered nurse, a career that is very different from the fame of her biological family. Rachel got married as well, and supposedly had her own family, but she keeps those specifics very. In the article in Texas Monthly, Rachel appeared to be grounded on tough, someone who came out on top from a unique background with a sound feeling of self. She conveyed a combination of protectiveness and annoyance over her father's protectiveness in that she vehemently dislikes false stories that are written in her family, and her annoyance that the complete truth about the assassination of JFK is still elusive. Rachel retreated, just like her sister, into oblivion following her vocalization of ideas in the 1990s. Rachel Oswald is currently in her early 60s. Porter, as many call her when they recognize her, she continues to reside in America, most likely in relative. What about the girl's friend Marina? Mom, Additionally, Marina Oswald Porter looked for a tranquil life in America. She became a U.S. citizen, resident in the 1980s, and made their home in Texas for good. Throughout the years, over time, Marina's perspective on the guilt of her husband, by the 1990s, shed a cloud in public that she thought Lee Oswald was set up, and Kennedy wasn't shot. Yet she also mostly shied away from interviews in public. Marina stayed away from the spotlight and shielded her second Kenneth Porter's family. The final when journalists first saw Marina was around 50 years after the 2013 assassination, when a tabloid captured her shopping for groceries in a suburb of Dallas. She was then in her granny many times over in the 70s. Both Rachel and June are parents to their own children.